Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us on this fine day.
It's a really hot day.
It's hot. So hot.
I'm Savannah.
I'm Elysia.
This is Burden of Proof.
Burden of Proof. Okay. So I'm just going to jump right into it because I am like half angry at myself for choosing this case.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also pumped. Like, as a mother, you would think, like, I want this case because she's a mother.
Yeah.
I'm a mother. But at the same time,
I
get real throat punchy thinking about all of this.
You might not know the TikTok audio, or I don't know if maybe it started out on Vine where it goes, "Bitch, I'm a mother. No drama."
Oh, she is full of drama. Diane Downs, full of drama.
So today you're doing Diane Downs.
Diane Downs.
Diane Downs. I'm going to be honest. I know nothing. Going into this completely blind Reno.
This is going to be good.
I'm excited. I like not knowing things.
She is a sociopath extraordinaire.
Ooh.
All right. So I'm going to jump into it. All right. So Elizabeth, her full name is actually Elizabeth Diane Downs. She went by her middle name. She was born August 7th, 1955.
Oh, old-timey.
And the eldest of 5 children.
It's not really that old-timey.
Not really, but we'll get into that. So according to Anne Rule, the author of Small Sacrifices, which was the story based on Diane's life, Diane was ignored by her mother and abused by her father.
Oh, no.
Rabbit hole. Diane's family, or seemingly her father, actually started a website after everything happened. And he admits on that website, like, yeah, we weren't great parents. Like, my children never heard "I love you" until they were much older.
What?
And,
I cannot understand that.
Yeah. Well, you will when you hear how she is.
Well,
You'll go, like, that makes total sense.
In general, like, on one hand, physical abuse, I feel like I've seen it so much more regularly in media portrayal, you know? So I kind of feel like, I understand that. Not I understand it, but I've seen it. When it comes to, like, not telling them you love them.
Yeah, no, they basically were taught their children not to show their emotions. Like,
what?
Don't cry.
What?
Don't get upset.
That's so horrible,
yeah.
Little humans have so many emotions and they feel them so big.
Exactly. Yeah. Terrible. It's terrible. Okay. So I just want to throw that little tidbit in. You know, she grew up, she was socially awkward, but very intelligent and excelled academically. But she felt ignored, just not seen. Diane would later testify in court that she was never, this goes back to the feelings in her family. Sorry, my notes were a little out of order. She testifies in court during her trial that she was never allowed to cry. And so she developed what so many sociopaths develop, which is they actually smile or laugh at inappropriate times when they should be visibly upset and crying. So flash forward, that's the gist of her, like, young childhood. In high school, she meets Steve Downs at 15. She said she fell for him because he made her feel important. He did things like, fight for her, and she felt like
it was probably just the bare minimum. And she's
probably because the bar was probably set pretty low. I know, like, when other people, I've listened to a couple podcasts on this. Some people do 2-parters, some people just do one. Because it's one of those stories, like, you can just hit on the highlights and do a short one. Mine will probably be somewhere in between. A lot of people are making him sound, she claims that he was abusive. Other people, like, when you hear what she did, it's like, oh, what a great guy. Yeah. But who knows? Like, maybe he was, maybe he isn't. I don't really know. It's kind of a he said, she said. Yeah. Her family backs her up saying, yes, he was abusive. I don't know. But I couldn't really find anything of, like, evidence, like, that she was, at the hospital, that he had been arrested for domestic violence. Like, nothing. I couldn't find anything like that. In November 13th of 1973, they got married. But just 2 weeks into the marriage, Diane claims she realized she made a mistake. She felt like Steve didn't truly love her. He's just using her for sex, yada, yada. Well, one of the accusations was that her father not only was abusive emotionally, but that he sexually abused her. So is that the case, or is that her perception? We don't know. In any case, she decided to grow her own source of love.
Oh, no. That is so horrible. What a way to start.
Yes.
No. Okay. Okay. Are you ready for this life advice?
Oh, boy.
Children never solve problems.
Yeah. No. Not spoiler.
If anything, they create them.
Yes. Yes.
Children isn't going to save your marriage. It's not going to save your relationship. It's not going to save you.
No. And, well, I'll get into that in a minute. But basically, like, you don't have children to have children to love you.
No.
You have children so that you can love them.
Mm-hmm.
But no, she had it a little backwards. So without telling Steve, she stopped taking her birth control. And
that's so wrong.
Her firstborn, Christy, was born October 7th of 1974. Christy was a perfect baby.
The first ones always are.
You know, mine wasn't, but but that's okay. No, she was pretty chill as a baby, as far as babies go, but it was when she got a little older, she became a handful. But she said Christy was beautiful. She loved her. She was so easy to take care of. She didn't cry hardly at all. Very easy to love. But Diane claims that Steve's abuse got worse after having Christy because, well, yeah, you tricked him into having a baby that he was 19. They were young.
Whoa, I didn't put that together.
Yeah, they were young. They got married some sources say she went off to college, but she went to like a Bible college and she got kicked out for being promiscuous. So then she came back and she got back together with Steve. They get married. Okay. So they were married young.
I'm 20 and the idea of having a child at 19 makes me want to cry.
Yeah. I was 27 when I had my first and
I
was scared.
In the late 20s.
I was scared even then. I can't imagine. So desperate to grow more love.
I hate that. That feels so wrong. It feels gross.
It is gross. It is gross. She once again gets pregnant without Steve's consent. So their second born, Cheryl, came into the world on January 10th, 1976. But Diane's plan backfires. This time around, only colicky baby.
Oh, no.
Cheryl was a fussy baby, colicky, difficult. Cried a lot.
For those of us who are 20 and don't know what colicky really means.
Oh, yes. That basically is like persistent gas issue.
Oh.
So
gassy baby.
It usually starts around, typically it'll start around 6 weeks of age, 4 to 6 weeks of age, I believe. And it'll last for so many weeks. But so I spent every night between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. dealing with my oldest, who was colicky, for about 3 or 4 weeks, nonstop.
I love those videos where they have to fart their babies. So they stretch them out, they run their legs.
Yeah. And that's what you have to do to try and get it worked out.
Yeah.
But when they're colicky, it's just so persistent and terrible for them that they're just always in pain. Yeah. It is. Some sources say that she even went so far as to say that Cheryl wasn't even cute.
What?
Which is crazy to me because in the family photos, she looks a lot like Christy. They look a lot alike. So it was just Diane.
She was having a more difficult time.
Diane's throwing a fit that, why can't you be more like your sister? Yeah. Kind of thing. So Steve goes and has a vasectomy because
Smart Steve.
And she, at the time, agreed that they didn't need any more children. But Steve forgets to go for his follow-up visit. Because, for those of you who might not know, like you, when you have a vasectomy, you have to go back about 9 or 10 weeks later to get your stuff checked to make sure the vasectomy actually worked and that your sperm count will not be present. And I won't go into the actual, I could explain.
I'm processing
the actual
because I don't
procedure.
think I realized that was the result of a vasectomy.
Yes, that is the result of the vasectomy.
I just thought that it made them not viable, not that it didn't exist.
No, it actually, yeah, you're actually like rerouting them, essentially.
Huh.
Yes.
I learn something new every day.
Yeah. So
sorry,
he did not go back
no.
and get checked.
So he clearly did not know what the result of a vasectomy was supposed to be.
I think people just don't think that. I think because it's such a simple procedure, like it's done in a doctor's office. Yeah. You don't go to the hospital. It's not like this big ordeal. So I think probably like a lot of guys, he probably just kind of forgot and was like, it's okay. Like I had it. It's a typical procedure. Like how wrong could it go? Well, it can go very wrong. Because Diane got pregnant again, but she has an abortion this time because they had agreed. Yeah. No more children. They couldn't afford this kid. And after having Cheryl, she was worried that
she was going to
get another colicky, like unlovable baby, essentially. So they agreed that it would have just been too much. Yeah. So she has the abortion, and then Steve goes back to have a second vasectomy.
Get them frozen peas back out of the freezer.
Yes. Hopefully he went for that follow-up. No, he did. So the following year and a half, Diane would try to leave Steve several times, but she kept going back, and he would keep taking her back.
I roll.
Yes.
I never get that.
You know, well, some sources basically said that she would go, I don't fully understand this because they said she would go back when she couldn't find like a viable job. She would take the kids, but she couldn't find a job that was suitable for, I guess, taking care of two kids, which makes sense, except that then she goes on to get jobs later so I don't understand, like, and it's not like she went back to school or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know the story. I don't know the whole story. But that's the case. And about 2 years after her abortion, she starts to become obsessed. Like 2 years, like after the fact, she actually names the baby that she aborted. She becomes obsessed with the idea of becoming pregnant again. She actually asks Steve to reverse his vasectomy, which he refuses. So she tells him, that's fine. I'll find a donor. She went on to have 3 affairs with coworkers in an attempt to find who she wanted to be the donor, so to speak.
So isn't it fair if he knows that that's what she's going to go do? But he wasn't consenting to having a baby. Like,
no, this is, we don't know. We don't know. Like, did he just say, okay, she's going to go off and have an affair? Like, like, did she,
but she for sure told him, I'm going to go.
Supposedly, yes.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she finds who she wants at work.
Okay.
Which was a 19-year-old kid. She's like 23-ish at this time. Okay. She finds like a 19-year-old kid. He's good looking. At this point, she's working for a wiring. She would do electrical wiring in like mobile homes. So she's working around predominantly men, I'm sure, male-driven field at that time especially. But she's like spoiler, sociopath. Most of them, a lot of people with personality disorders, when they're in certain environments, they can be extremely charming and the life of the party. So when she's at work, like, she's the life of the party, and these dudes love her, which is why she manages, and they think nothing of, because a lot of them are married.
Yeah. And
so they'll have affairs with her and then know that, like, okay, we're done. And now she's having an affair with that guy, and apparently nobody, like, cared. Nobody cares.
That's weird.
Well, yeah. She finds who she wants, and then she has said in multiple interviews, basically throughout her whole story, that she always was very in tune with her cycle. So she knew when she was going to be ovulating, And all it took was one time. So she seduces this guy one time and gets pregnant. And despite Steve knowing that it can't be his kid, he stays with her and accepts the kid as his own.
And she claims that Steve is abusive?
Yeah. And so that's why people don't really believe that he was abusive because, like, what?
I have known 3 people in my life whose dads are not their biological fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Who have just taken them in and loved them just as much. And they're all the nicest people. I'm just generalizing a little bit.
Yeah. And so that's kind of why the speculation is, Diane, you're probably, and, you know, you can't believe much of what she says. So that's why a lot of people don't believe that he was abusive. However, I will say this. I will say, not that there's ever an excuse to abuse people, but I could see how someone like Diane Downs could push a person to get to the point where they do abuse. It's not that they are, I wouldn't label them an abuser, but they act out or they behave in an abusive way.
If you're a sociopath or a psychopath or whatever your diagnosis is, and you're manipulating people, that's emotional abuse within itself. So they're also a victim.
Right. Exactly.
It's a very messy gray area.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it could technically, by definition. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So Stephen Danny Downs was born December 29th, 1979, but they call him Danny.
I hate that. Name your kid what you're going to call your kid.
Yeah, that's well, I know it used to be very common in the South. My father's family was from Arkansas.
Yeah. And
they did that all the time. They'd go by middle names.
My brother is a junior, and he goes by his first and his middle name.
Yeah.
Because that is his name. Yep.
Luckily for baby Danny, he was perfect like Christy. So easy to love. And everybody loved him. He is very cute. He was a very cute baby. But that's still not enough for Diane. But she does at least seem to realize that she isn't so much obsessed with having children and taking care of children, just the feeling of being pregnant.
Okay.
She continues to be obsessed with the idea of being pregnant. So since she can't, I don't know. I guess she realized that you can't just keep going around seducing men into knocking you up.
And have one of them support you.
And and Steve isn't going to keep supporting you if you keep doing that. So she decides to apply to be a surrogate mother.
I was going to say, yeah.
Which she also finds out that surrogates at the time got paid $10,000. So she was in need of money. Here's the interesting part, and this is where we could get real detailed because it is rather interesting, but she actually had to go through a few different psychological exams by different psychiatrists or psychologists, and she didn't exactly pass any of them. But she was young, and she was healthy, and she had a history of having healthy pregnancies, so they let her into the program.
I mean, when you say didn't exactly pass...
So basically, they could tell that her marriage with Steve because they not only evaluated her, they evaluated the spouse because they want to make sure, it's not, And that's the other reason that I question, was he really abusive? I don't think so. Because they noticed tension, but they didn't cite we think the husband's an abuser.
And they know to look for those things.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're looking for. They evaluate them. They interview them. They all note that there's tension in the marriage. And they note that she seems to be able to turn her emotions on and off. And she's manipulative, basically. Okay. And ultimately, they all said that they questioned if she would actually be able to give up the baby. Is what it boiled down to. Is they didn't believe that she would actually follow through with the contract and hand the baby over when the time came. But she gets into the program, but it's a time, this takes time. So in the meantime, she continues to have affairs until Steve finally says,
stop it.
Sayonara. Let's have a divorce. I'll give you a divorce. And I think there was some agreement that she would buy him out of the house or something like that. And one of her boyfriends at the time, like, gave her the money to buy Steve out so she could get divorced. Then on May 7th, 1982, she actually had followed through with the surrogate thing despite getting divorced and whatnot. So she gave birth to a baby girl and actually did honor the agreement and handed over the baby girl within 5 days. She went home, continued to work her way through multiple affairs with married coworkers until she found the one that she actually fell in love with. His name was Robert Knickerbocker, but he went...
I'm sorry. Hold on. We're not moving past that. Oh, what now?
Yes. His name is Robert Knickerbocker, but his friends and coworkers all knew him he went by Nick. Okay. So from here on out, he'll probably be referred to as Nick.
Please, never say that again. I can't keep it together. Is he a clown? Betrayed.
Well, he did hook up with Diane Downs. But the thing is, he was married. A lot of the men that she had relations with were married. But she fell hard for him. And despite the fact that he made it clear in the beginning that this was just a fling for him, because he was actually hadn't been married long, but he was like not, I guess married life just wasn't what he wanted it to be. Thought it was going to be or something. But he did love his wife. So he's like, maybe a fling is what I need. He literally says when interviewed that he had seen Diane would have affairs, and oftentimes Diane would get tired of the men and she would like cut it off. So he wasn't scared that she was going to get attached to him because he had watched her. So this affair goes on, is like on again, off again for months because she did get attached to him. So he would try to end it and she would always worm her way back in. Until he like finally is like, no, like at the same time that he's saying, no, we need to stop. She gets an opportunity to move to Oregon because her father, she was working at the post office at this point. So her and Nick worked together at the post office. Her father had become the postmaster up in a town in Oregon. So she can like move up there, stay within the post office, but like have a better position, a better route. It's close to family. She can get help with the kids, yada, yada. So in the spring of 1983, she says, okay, I'm going to start fresh. But she does seem to think, like, she had herself kind of convinced that she really thought that good old Nick was not going to just let her go. He would follow her. Except he doesn't. Several months later, she took her children one night to visit a friend, and they leave the friend's house at about 9:30 at night. Diane takes, the scenic route home, claiming she went that way to see the sights. She saw a road that she had never been down and wanted to go sightseeing.
I've done that.
At 9:30 at night on a country road.
No, not done. I'm not done.
Most people don't because there's not much to see, right?
But I am known for, like, if we're in we were just in Atlanta last weekend. Mm-hmm. We were in a really rich area. I was like, let's go look at the houses and pull them. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you can see things, there's lights, there's street lights, there's neighborhoods. Yeah, no, this is like a country road where not many people are around. There are houses, but I'm guessing, from the description that they aren't like close to the road.
I haven't done that.
So the kids, it's questionable. The kids fall asleep. Christy may or may not have been asleep.
Okay, because how old is Christy at this point?
Christy at this point is 8.
Okay, so yeah.
She's 8. Cheryl is 6 or just turned 7, and Danny is about 3.
Okay.
So Diane's claim is that a bushy-haired man came out into the middle of the road and waved her down. So she stopped and asked, what's the problem?
What's the matter, mister?
What's the matter? And she not only did she stop, but she supposedly got out of the car.
Helping is for dead people, so don't do that ever.
Yeah, or at least be smart about it. Now, granted, this was not at a time when cell phones were around, but still, Like, stay in your car so you can drive away.
It's the middle to late 80s. There were lots of serial killers at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine. Yeah. You should know better.
So she says that he demands her keys or demands the car. And she claims that her response was, "You've got to be kidding me."
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
And that he pushed her aside, pulled out a gun, leaned into the car, and started shooting her children.
Okay, I have a question. Is
yes.
Is Diane Downs white?
Yes.
When she says bushy-haired man, is she trying to blame this on a black man?
No, the composite sketch that they come up with doesn't exactly I wouldn't. He could be of another ethnicity, maybe, but not like, because she's like blonde hair, blue eyed.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking white. Like,
yeah.
But he doesn't have.
I was just trying to figure out if this was like her trying to be like, I'm just a little white girl. This, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
no.
I was trying to figure out if she was trying to be like that.
I don't think so. I think she was just trying to give like.
I mean, it's Oregon,
general.
South, so.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's really what. In the composite sketch, he has bushy hair, but it's straight. And like,
okay. Never mind. I apologize.
So it's just like disheveled, longer hair, but yeah. Valid question though.
I'm just saying.
Because
that would make me hate her more.
You'll hate her more here shortly.
Well, I know, but like, come on, you can't.
But that would make it even worse.
Hate that.
Absolutely.
I hate when they're aware of their privilege and then use it to their advantage. Like, that's not what you're supposed to do with your privilege. No.
Quite the opposite. So again, she claims that he leans in, starts shooting the kids. Then he goes to grab the keys. She throws the keys into the bushes, or pretends to. I'm sorry. She pretends to throw the keys out into the bushes. And he shoots her.
Go get him.
Yeah. She says that he shoots her in the arm. Perfect shot. Right in the middle of her forearm. Halfway between her wrist and elbow. He runs to get the keys. She jumps in the car, takes off. She says she drives like a lunatic all the way to the hospital, where she pulls in the ER and starts yelling, "Please help." So they come out and find a nightmare. Just a nightmare. Yeah. Her younger daughter, her middle child, Cheryl, the colicky one, what had been sitting in the front seat and was pronounced dead upon arrival, or shortly upon after arrival. The bullet that hit Danny had gone into his spine and damaged his spine. The doctors said he's paralyzed. He will never walk again. Christy had been hit and had a major stroke that the doctor said they did not expect her to necessarily recover from. They said if so, it would be extremely difficult. The doctor that came in to do surgery on Christy, later states in an interview that he thought Christy was dead when he first stepped in the room. He said her pupils were dilated and her blood pressure was basically non-existent. Like I said, Diane had just been shot halfway, between in her forearm, and she had a towel wrapped around her arm.
Oh, so you have a towel and you're not going to use it on one of your kids?
Exactly.
When you've been shot in the arm.
Her reasoning for that was, well, if I had taken the time to stop and try to put the towel and it would have taken more time. It would have taken even 5 seconds. Could have been a difference between life and death. I needed to get the kids. And she claims that she did it while she was driving. Like, she just grabbed a towel and wrapped it around while she was driving. But it was wrapped pretty neatly from the description. So police show up. They interview Diane. There was some, it took a while because one set of police show up, and it was kind of one of those situations, and they find out, oh, well, you were on the old county road, so now we need to call the sheriff's department instead of the city police. But they do finally get a chance to kind of do an initial interview with her, and they ask her to go with them back to the scene. They're like, your kids are being taken care of. There's nothing you can do right now. Come with us to the scene to show us what happened. As they're walking to the police car, they walk past her car, which is now being guarded by another officer. And she tells the officers, I hope my car is okay. Are there any bullet holes in it? And they said, we don't know. We haven't checked it yet.
I hope my car is okay.
These officers would later state that Diane's demeanor the entire time they talk with her is very flat. And that even after she found out Cheryl was dead, she never shed a tear.
What?
Suddenly, at the scene, when they're asking her, like, well, where did this man come from? You know, like, this is a country road. Like,
yeah,
how did this happen? She suddenly remembers that there was an, quote, icky yellow car parked on the side of the road, except now it's not there.
Okay.
So she runs through her story. They take her back to the hospital. She is admitted because she was going to need to have surgery because the bullet hit her tendon or something in her arm. So she's going to need to have surgery. That same doctor who worked on Christy recalls that his name's Dr. Stephen Wilhite. He recalls that when he found Diane upon her return to the hospital and he went to update her about Christy, not only did she not shed a tear, but she said, I really ruined my new car. I got blood all over the back of it.
I really ruined my new car.
Yeah.
I got blood all over the back
exactly. Of it. And then the hospital staff and police all had moments where they were struck by Diane's lack of emotion, as well as every time she'd walk into Christy's room. So Christy survives.
Yeah.
Every time she'd walk into Christy's room, Christy's vitals would spike.
Oh, no.
But she couldn't talk yet. She doesn't talk for like months after because she's still recovering. So the detectives at some point when she's in the hospital,
That hurts my heart.
I know.
Sorry.
I know.
It's her automatic reaction.
I know.
So painful.
It is. I have to kind of like put a wall up.
Oh, yeah.
As my mom heart is like, no. But detectives then get Diane's permission to search her home.
Yeah.
Just like, can we do that? And she's, sure. By the way, bring me my diaries back. And she tells them, because of course, one of the questions they ask is, do you own guns?
Yeah.
And she tells them, yeah, I have 2 guns. I have a .38 special, what they used to call Saturday Night Special or something, in the trunk of my car, still there. And I have a .22 caliber rifle in my home. This is where you'll find it. So they go to the apartment. When they walk in, it's sparse. It looks like nobody actually lives there. It looks like somebody's still in the process of moving in. All they find 4 pictures. All of her, or at this point to them, an unknown man. No pictures of her kids or other family members.
Okay.
So they're wondering because they did notice that she had a tattoo on her shoulder with the name Nick.
Okay.
Okay. So they're wondering if this is Nick. They also find a golden unicorn like statuette that she mentioned. All the stories, like everybody mentions this unicorn statuette. I don't really understand. I think that everybody mentions it because they think, like, she talks about it to the police. She's like, oh, I shouldn't have bought that. I just bought that as a significance of like starting our life fresh over, but it's like this unicorn little statue that's gold, and she had their names engraved in it. The 3 kids. Okay. So I guess the question is, did you is that the reason you got it, or did you get it in like beforehand, but in remembrance of your kids because you thought they were all going to be dead?
Or did you think, well, I don't need to prove that I loved my kids?
Yeah. Nobody really knows, but to everybody it seems significant, so I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
They also find journals with entries talking about how much she loves Nick. Her coworker, Nick. She's so in love. In the meantime, Steve Downs flew to Oregon from Arizona.
Okay.
Because
his kids are...
Yeah, his kids are now... One of them's dead.
Lost one.
Yep. he tells them he knows who Nick is.
Yeah.
That it's Robert Knickerbocker, known as Nick, that he's a married man that Diane used to work with and that she was having an affair and fell hard for back in Arizona. They ask him if he knows if Diane owns any guns. He says yes. She owns 3 guns.
Aha.
Or she has 3 guns, I should say. He says a .22 rifle, a .38 revolver, and a .22, and he was very specific, a .22 Ruger Mark IV 9-shot semi-automatic pistol.
Why was he so specific?
Because it was his gun.
Oh,
he had gotten. Yeah, he says that he got the gun when he had done some work for somebody. It was like a barter kind of thing. And so they ask him, well, wait, why would she have it? And he said that when he last saw it, it was about 6 months prior to that day, and that she had taken it before and borrowed it before. And so when it went missing, he just assumed that she had it.
Okay. Well, married couples do that. Oh, well.
They weren't married, though. But she had still, come and taken it and borrowed it, I guess, even after they split up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Everything about this is weird.
Yeah, that's true.
So detectives ask him about Nick.
Mm-hmm.
And if he thought that she might put the children, or Nick, ahead of the children, basically. Would she ever, harm your children for the sake of somebody? And he was adamant that no, these children are her life. She wanted nothing more than to be a mother, which did seem to be the case.
True.
However, in some of the later interviews with people she had affairs with, many of those men would say, oh, she talked terrible about her kids. They were nothing than a burden. They start investigating. They follow the bushy-haired man lead. They put the news, it's in the news. The whole town is losing it because everybody thinks oh no, are me and my kids going to be next? How you can't even drive down a country road.
This bushy-haired man is going to come.
He's a madman who shot 3 kids and he's on the loose.
For no apparent reason. There's no motive. He killed these kids for no reason.
Yeah, but they didn't have much to work with. She didn't give them, she's just
It's not real.
It's a bushy-haired man. That's all. The composite sketch, like I said, it's questionable. You can't even really tell what ethnicity the person would even be.
Conveniently vague.
Yes, exactly. They didn't have much to work with, and the only evidence they found at the scene were some casings from the bullets. The composite did nothing because he's not real. They looked all around. They had a search party all around the area looking for anything, looking for the gun, looking for evidence that some dude had been camped out, and nothing. They found nothing. They even had divers in the ponds and waterways nearby. Yeah. They found nothing. So detectives go back and do a more in-depth interview with Diane. When she sees they're going to record it, she hesitates to talk. And when they question her on it, then she kind of laughs it off and, oh, okay, recording it won't hurt. So she agrees. However, the interview is a little strange because they don't even have to ask questions. She just starts talking nonstop, and it's as if she's anticipating what they're going to ask. And so she just keeps going and going and going.
Because she had rehearsed her answers.
Yeah, kind of. But detectives do report later on that this is the first and only time that she actually did start to tear up when talking about Cheryl. But she immediately shut it down and then appeared embarrassed by having lost control of her emotions.
That's weird.
So after talking with her again, they start digging deeper. They begin to question, why would she have only been shot in the arm? And why would if the shooter's trying to carjack you and the goal is to get the car, why would they just lean into the car and start shooting the sleeping children?
Yeah, no, the sleeping children aren't preventing you from stealing the car at all.
Right. So why wouldn't you shoot? Like, why wouldn't he shoot you and take the keys and take off with the kids or push the kids out of the car onto the road or something, if that was the goal? They note that she had taken the time to neatly wrap the towel around her arm instead of using it, but she has reasons. She has reasons. Diane gets out of the hospital and pretty much immediately, starts a press tour, for lack of a better term.
Also, like, where's Nick?
Nick is not in the picture. Like, he never came to Oregon. He never followed her.
I know, but she has a tattoo. Okay, we're gonna get there.
Yeah,
right.
We'll get there.
I'm ahead of the game.
So Diane and her family agrees that, like, oh, you should do a news conference, you know, to beg for this person to come forward, or if anybody knows, like people do when children get hurt or missing. But it kind of goes weird from the start. At this point, she knows that the focus of the investigation and, like, people are asking questions saying this just doesn't seem legit. So she knows that.
Suspicious.
So I wish, this is one of those times, like, I hope that I can do this justice, because to see her interview is to see her facial expressions and everything. It's chilling. I got goosebumps every time I watch it. It's chilling.
I know. I sat here and I looked at pictures because I didn't know what she looked like. And then I was appalled that she had so many affairs.
Yeah.
And then...
she's not... Actually, in the book Small Sacrifices, Anne Rule describes her as, like, she's one of those people that she's very plain or not very attractive except in certain angles. So, like, there's certain pictures of her where you're like, oh, wow, she's beautiful.
Okay, I kinda get it.
And then, but a lot of them, you're like, who are all these dudes having an affair with this woman? Like, how is this working? But she can be charming when she wants to be. Okay, so in the interview, she gets extremely defensive sounding and says, if I had shot my own children, would I not have done a good job of it? Why would I have taken my kids to the hospital? Wouldn't I have made sure they were dead and then cried crocodile tears? That's insane to think I'd do such a thing and then bring the witnesses in myself. That's crazy.
Did anybody accuse you of this before you started yelling about it?
No, other than talk, just in the public. So now detectives are very suspicious.
Yeah.
So they asked Diane to do a reenactment, which she was seemingly more than happy to do. During the recorded reenactment, Diane is seen primping herself in the car mirror. Like, she's sitting in the car. They start recording, but they don't start officially yet. She's seen, like, primping herself to make sure, you know, she looks good for the camera. She seems gleeful to be on camera and is, like, making jokes, laughing. You're reenacting what should be the absolute worst night of your life.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no words for that.
Disturbing. At one point, she hits her cast, like, when she's, like, trying to show how she pushed the guy out of the way and jumped into the car. She hits her cast, and as she jumps into the car and is heard saying, this is worse than, but stops herself, detectives think that she was about to say, they're like, you know, we couldn't help but feel she was about to say, this is worse than when I shot myself.
Yeah. I love, because you know that when you're anticipating somebody's words, it's hard to say, well, I knew she was going to say that. But you do. Yeah. You know what people are going to say in the moment.
Yeah.
How old is Danny again? I know you told me.
Danny was 3 at the time.
So I know he was paralyzed. So he wasn't talking at the hospital?
He had been asleep. Him and Cheryl had been asleep. The reason that it's important about Christy is that Diane's story is flip-flops. And we'll get to that. Okay. But Diane's story flip-flops. And at first, all 3 kids are asleep. Then Christy's not asleep. We come to find out Christy was not asleep. Yes. So if she had been asleep, then she woke up at some point before the shooting took place. Okay. Diane continues to chase interviews thinking it will help drum up sympathy. Mm-hmm. But it actually has the opposite effect because she can't stop talking. And the more she talks, the more she
should have lawyered up. They would have told her to
digs
shut
the
up.
hole. Exactly. So in these interviews, she brazenly states that Danny is not paralyzed, that he will walk again, even if they have to will him to do it. She like says something like, if we can just love him enough, I know that the mind is so powerful over the body. Yeah, something to that effect. So despite the fact that all the doctors are saying no, and he's still in the hospital at this point, the children are immediately put into fire. Like, they never go back with her.
Yeah, because they're like, this ain't right. Yeah.
But Christy is still in the hospital for quite some time through recovery. She's unable to speak. But again, like, every time Diane can visit, and every time she comes in, they keep noting, like, the hospital staff is telling the detectives, like, every time she comes in, Christy's vitals spike. So this is the interview. And actually, the reporter that does this final interview, her name's Anne Jaeger, and she is a big part of the 2020 special that I watched, that everybody kind of watched about this whenever they're reporting. Huh?
There's a special?
Yeah, 2020. It's called My Mother's Sins. Huh. And Anne Jaeger says that when Diane showed up to this interview with her, it's a national interview. I think maybe at this point, Diane had mostly done like local news stations and stuff like this. This is a national one. And Anne wanted her. They invite her in. They tell her, you can have your attorney come with you.
Yeah.
Anne says, when she walked in that door without a lawyer, I thought, gotcha. Because then she can ask whatever questions she wants. So in the interview,
I love it. That's great.
Diane, honestly, I doubt she even had to ask. Like, they only showed clips of like Diane talking.
Yeah.
I don't even know what questions she asked, because that's the thing about Diane. She'll just keep talking. She'll just dig her own grave. So in the interview, she just kept saying that she just kept saying to herself when everything happened and when her kids are in the hospital about to die, that she's praying to God, do what's best. You know, if they gotta die, let them die, but don't let them suffer.
What? Are you kidding me? That's not the words of somebody whose children are like still...
Like, they're still alive. They could survive.
Yeah. That's the word of somebody, of a parent who's like with a terminally ill child.
Yes.
Who's like, I don't want them to suffer.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about my
like
parents.
They are suffering.
I never imagined my father ever being like, well, I mean,
if she's gotta die,
then
like, okay. Yeah. Disturbing.
Not so soon after.
This is the part that gave me goosebumps, though. Okay. She's describing seeing Christy, like, as she's driving to the hospital. She looks back and she sees Christy, and she's describing seeing Christy with blood gushing out of her mouth. And she literally, like, smirks and, like, smiles as she's, like, right when she gets to the part that she's like, and she's got blood gushing out of her mouth. Chills. Goosebumps.
Okay, I have to watch this.
So gross. Then she goes on to say, everybody says you sure were lucky. Well, I don't feel very lucky. I couldn't tie my damn shoes for about 2 months.
Whoa.
And then she starts laughing. And then she says, I don't think I was very lucky. I think my kids were lucky. If I had been shot the way they were, we all would have died. Just let that marinate for a minute.
Okay, so when people say you're so lucky, they mean that the fact that 2 of your children are still alive. It does not mean that you're lucky you were shot in the arm.
Yeah.
Ah! No, burn it with fire.
So, hold on your seats.
Hold on to your butts if you listen.
Hold on to your butts, because it's about to get wilder.
What?
She also reveals in this interview that she is pregnant again. Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, I did spoil that for myself looking at pictures of her because I noticed she was pregnant.
Yeah, when she gets arrested.
I'm sorry, but I was waiting on it to come out. Is it Nick's baby?
Just wait for it. So she says that she got pregnant intentionally because she misses her children. And while you can't replace children, you can replace the feeling that they give you, which is love. She says children give her love, satisfaction, and stability. Hello, psycho. That's supposed to be your job. You are supposed to give the children.
Do you think she just, as somebody with severe mental health issues, obviously, she just needed the routine that children require? I don't know.
I don't know, because according to reports, like, she left her kids a lot. When she moved to Oregon, she would leave her kids a lot with her mom.
Then never mind.
That her mom had them.
When she says stability, like, maybe she just means routine, because I have a dog, and even I know that that's not the same as having a child. But, like, my dog's routine is legit. It's the same with, like, a baby. Yeah.
So everyone's question was what you already asked. Who is the father of this child? Yeah. So it turns out it's a man that was on her postal route.
Oh my gosh.
She had seen him and decided he had good bone structure, is attractive, and seemed intelligent. So she showed up to his house one night.
Took off the trench coat.
With some whiskey and marijuana. And they choked it up.
Oh my God.
And again, she admits, I know my cycle. It only took one time.
I know my cycle like that too. I get what you're saying.
While Diane is making her TV rounds and putting her foot in her mouth left and right, detectives are doing their jobs. They take a closer look at the car, where they find high-velocity blood splatter on the outside of the lower door frame on the passenger side. Okay. This doesn't align with Diane's story of the shooter leaning in the window on the driver's side and shooting Cheryl.
Okay. Because Cheryl was in the passenger seat. Okay.
How would blood get on the outside if the door's closed? How does it get on the outside and a splatter? It's not like, oh, blood seeped through the door. No, it's splatter.
Yeah.
So detectives believed, and they lay it all out. Oh, sorry, I'm getting handsy.
She's talking with her hands.
Talking with my hands and hitting my microphone.
I'm just floored.
So detectives believe that because Cheryl was shot twice in the shoulders, essentially, in her shoulders. They believe that despite the fact that the first shot would have been deadly to her, they believe that she may have mustered up enough something to be able to, like, hit the door handle and open the door and kind of fall out. But because she started to get away,
she shot her again.
She leaned in over the seat and shot her again when she was on the ground just outside the door, which would create the blood splatter on the door, on the frame. Okay. While they were searching, they found 22 cartridges in the rifle that she admitted to having, that they had found in her apartment. Okay. They found extractor marks on the rims of those cartridges that did not come from the rifle, and the markings on the cartridges matched the markings on the shell casings found at the scene of the crime.
Ballistics is crazy.
It is. It's nuts. Detectives found a witness who states that he was driving behind Diane's car, and he is sure that it was her car because it's the same car, make, model, color, and had Arizona plates.
Okay. Yeah.
And that he was driving behind her on the road where the shooting took place, but down further. Mm-hmm. And that he says, despite the fact that she says she drove like a lunatic to the hospital,
she was fine.
No, she did not. This man says, I get stuck behind her on this long curvy road, so I'm scared to pass because there's lots of curves. And she was going so slow that he says his speedometer barely registered. She was going less than 10 miles an hour. So she's driving along waiting for her children to bleed out.
Yeah, that's what she's doing. She's waiting for them to die. Well, she should be a better shot.
Yeah. So detectives are now looking for motive. Like, it's all signs are pointing to Diane, but they need motive. So they re-examine the diaries. She had asked them to bring the diaries in the hospital, but they made copies of them before they took them to her.
Yeah, because they're not stupid.
Yeah. So upon closer look, they find many entries that read like letters to Nick, which say things like, no one can take your place. I can't even say this, seriously.
What?
No one can take your place in my bed or my heart.
I'm gonna. I can't.
And saying things like, my kids won't be any trouble. I swear.
Oh no.
They determined that, I also want to mention, I didn't put it in my notes, but I recall, I don't remember what source it was, but one of my sources also mentioned that like there really wasn't any entries about the kids until like it was all like Nick, love letters to Nick, until like just like a few weeks before the shooting. And then all of a sudden it's entries of like, oh, me and the kids went to the park. We had so much fun today. We did this. We did that. Yeah.
Premeditation.
Exactly.
Excuse me. Did I cough?
They determined through these things that when Nick broke it off with Diane, one of the reasons that he gave her was that he didn't want, one of the excuses that he gave her for needing to break it off is that he doesn't want to be a dad because he didn't have kids of his own.
Oh, okay. Valid.
So there's your motive.
This is nuts because after everything she went through to have the children.
But remember what I said. She loves being pregnant. She has said something to the effect. I didn't quote it because I didn't know about that source, but I didn't quote it. But supposedly she says something about like she loved being pregnant because she felt like she wasn't alone because she like had them with her.
Because you feel there's like a need for you. You feel needed.
Yeah.
And she's been ignored her whole life.
Yeah. So detectives fly down to Arizona to interview Steve Downs again, as well as track down Nick.
Yeah.
Robert Knickerbocker. So they interview Nick, and he tells them that I had the affair because I just wanted a fling, and she had always like
just flung.
gotten sick of people and been done with them. So he thought that she would get tired of it eventually, and she would let it go. But he says that unfortunately it escalated and continued on and off until she moved. And thank God she moved. And then I could be free of it.
Yeah.
Then they go and talk to Steve. And Steve tells police about a time that he was with Diane, which actually I have to say, I was trying to shorten my notes, but I have to say this. So he wanted to get back together with her.
Oh.
So he goes, she took, I think it was one of her trips for the surrogate thing, because her surrogate things took place in another state. So she flies back in expecting Nick to be the one to pick her up. And he's not there because he's broken it off with her, but she didn't believe him. And then Steve is there to pick her up from the airport, and she's mad about it. So he's with her. He takes her home. He actually took her to his house first, which is when she took the gun. Okay. And he saw that she put something in her purse, but didn't see what it was. But then they arrive at her trailer, and then she immediately goes in the house. She goes in, she locks herself in the bathroom, and then she starts yelling at him because he wanted to talk to her about getting back together.
Yeah.
She yells like through the bathroom. She's like, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to kill myself. You won't have to worry about it. I'm going to kill myself. And so then he hears a gunshot. So he busts in the door, and when he busts in, she's holding the gun pointed at him and says, I couldn't kill myself, but I could kill you.
What?
So she shot the gun in the bathroom, and it like went through the hole or a wall or a floor or something. I think the floor. So the police say like, oh, do you think that's still there? Did you ever fix it? Did you get rid of it? Like, what happened? And he's like, oh, no, it's probably still there. So the police go to the trailer to find if there's a bullet casing any evidence from that gun. They do find it, but unfortunately they couldn't match it because it had been too damaged, like weather damage and sitting in the soil and stuff. But they have all this evidence that's pointing at her, even though a lot of it might be circumstantial. Like, when you have enough circumstantial evidence, like, it
starts to not be circumstantial.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, like, come on. So they call her in for another more serious interview in the actual police station. and her story completely changes. Now suddenly she's telling them there were actually 2 people and that they called her by name, so they knew who she was. But when Detective Welch, who was like the main detective on the case, tells her story stinks, her response is, well, then you better go get some deodorant.
Okay.
Yeah. So
she needs a book of comebacks?
Yes. So detectives continue to try to keep up the tension.
Yeah.
To get her to crack, to make her uncomfortable. She didn't budge. Like, she would not budge. So at one point, the other detective, Detective West, says, and I quote, "If it was you, you're going to take the fall for it." And I love this. This is hilarious. At least I think it's hilarious. And he says, "If it wasn't you, then I'm going to quit this job."
That is funny. He said, well, if it ain't you, then I don't know. I don't know what else it is. So I'm just
not possible.
See myself out.
It's not possible.
It has to be you.
So while in the interview, Diane says, "I'll make you a deal, okay? Next time I remember something, fuck ya. You can find the guy yourself, because I know I didn't do it. And you can chase your little tails around for the next 20,000 years if that's what it takes. You don't like my help? You can fuck it. Hello, these people are trying to find the shooter of your children.
I don't...
Even if they make you a little bit mad and uncomfortable, like..."
Well, did you ever hear of victims' families not cooperating? Like, ever?
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, no. So at the end of the interview, she tells detectives she knows who did it.
Oh, of course you do.
And she'll go get him and bring him in if she has to. And then she storms out of the office. Like, she just gets up and goes, bye, and leaves.
So if you know who shot and killed one of your children and shot the other 2.
Why? And that's what they're like, dumbfounded. Why? So you know who did it? Why wouldn't you? Why would you just give us a bad composite of a bushy-haired stranger if you know who did it?
Or if you know who the bushy-haired stranger is, why didn't you just say something?
Yeah. At this point, there's a ton of public pressure to arrest. Like, everybody's questioning, why aren't you arresting this woman? It's obvious. But the district attorney was waiting for the
smoking gun.
The smoking gun, which was Christy.
Yes. I don't blame him. I get it.
So she was still in the hospital, unable to speak for a long time. But even after she regained her ability to speak, she was afraid to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So they had her in therapy, and the therapist working with her said, "You're going to write down on a piece of paper who shot you. And you're going to put it in an envelope, and then you're going to stick it in my fireplace to burn it.
Yeah.
Until you're ready to talk about it."
But she does have to heal in her own time. She's a kid.
Yeah. And at this point, she's
8?
9.
8 or 9,
yeah. Like, I mean, it's 8 to 9 years old. So this goes on for some time. They do this exercise many times until she was ready. And then she said, "No, I'm not going to put it in the fireplace." And she hands them the envelope, and they open it up, and it says, "My mom." So,
oh my gosh, this poor girl.
Diane was arrested on February 28th, 1984. And even when being arrested or transported, like in cuffs or anything, like all of the times, she's not sad. She doesn't look ashamed. She doesn't look embarrassed. She's smiling. And there's even one where there's even like a couple different photos where male deputies are hauling her out, and she's like looking up at them with doe eyes, like almost like adoringly. So funky. So funky.
So messed up.
Diane was charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of assault in the first degree. The trial becomes quite the production, of course, especially because she's very pregnant by this time. She's like she's almost 9 months. It was one of the first national stories of a mother killing or attempting to kill her kids. So that's the other reason it was so the courtroom was packed every day. A lot of the people following the case were women and mothers themselves.
Yeah, because it's like a train wreck.
Yeah.
You can't look away, but it's wrong. It's so messed up. Like, you just have, and part of you has to figure out why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
and
can't imagine trying to kill my dog, much as a child.
Yeah. So this wasn't televised. Like, there were no cameras. So people, like, they had to close it off because so many people were trying to get in.
For reference, I woke up crying about a dream about Elysia, one of Elysia's children dying the other day. Not even my own kid.
Yeah. But that's because you have a soul and are not a sociopath. Jurors were able to listen to the recordings of interviews Diane gave. So they got to hear her say in that flat tone that detectives were trying to describe. She says, quote, "They told me that Cheryl was in pretty bad shape and might not make it. And I said, okay."
And I said, okay.
Like, okay. No, honey. You say okay when somebody says, "Do you want tacos for lunch?" Like,
I say hell yeah when somebody says, "Do you want tacos for lunch?"
That's true. Maybe you say okay when somebody says, "Do you want PB&J for lunch?"
You're like, yeah, that'll work.
So this is kind of cool. Jim Pex, he was a forensic criminalist on the case from Oregon State Crime Laboratory, was able to use a mock car model, brought it into like a full-size mock car model, brought it into the courtroom, and used that along with photos of the real car to have comparison. And they had dolls in the car as kids, and they had like a fake gun that had like a measuring stick. So he was able to show them exactly like, this is where the gun would have been, had to have been, based on the blood splatter, the wound, where it hit, everything. He was able to show them exactly where the bullet strike was and how the blood splatter patterns got there. Mm-hmm. So then the moment came, the big moment, where Christy testified that Diane had stopped the car, got something out of the trunk of the car, not the truck, the trunk, came to the driver's side door, knelt on the driver's seat, shot Cheryl, then Danny, and then her.
Oh my gosh, she made her watch?
Yeah, she probably shot her last because that was her favorite kid. But then you're tormenting her.
But also, like, if she shot her first, the other two might have woken up.
Yeah.
So, you might not know the answer. Do you know who Christy and Danny were staying with? Were they with their dad, or were they in foster care?
They were so they were in foster care at that point. So that's more. Okay. To come. More to come. Okay. The defense claims that the ballistics were planted and that Christy's testimony was coerced. That was their defense.
I mean, you gotta give them something to work with. And she's young. I can see them being like, she's an 8-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl.
But a key moment in the trial, as far as the jurors are concerned, Christy had told them that the song "Hungry Like a Wolf" was playing during the shooting. Okay. Do you know that song? No. If you don't, look it up. It's a good song from the 80s. Duran Duran is the band. So during a demonstration in the courtroom, they play this song. And what does Diane do? So if you're familiar with the psychology of music and like how it affects our brains and how, like, I can hear a song from 25 years ago that will take me right back to the moment that, like, a certain moment, an event in my life, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, you will vividly remember it. You will, if it was a bad moment, you are not going to want to hear that song. No, I don't care how much you like the song beforehand. You are not going to want to hear that song.
I have a friend who was in a really bad car accident in high school, and his radio kept playing when he was sitting there with an injured back.
Yes.
And like, it came on. I've seen it happen. It's come on the radio or on somebody's playlist, and he gets physically upset.
Yes.
And
it's a physical response. You can't. It's not like.
No.
Yeah. No.
I can't believe they did that.
Well,
I
they didn't play it with. I don't think they played it with any of the kids in the courtroom. Okay. But they play it during a demonstration. And what does Diane do?
Tell me she doesn't smile.
Oh, no, she does more than that. She starts tapping her feet and her hands on the table and is like bobbing her head along. Like, I love this song. This is my favorite song.
Oh my God.
And the jurors looked at her in horror. Just, what is wrong with you?
I can't make myself take a breath. That's so shocking.
Yes.
Holy crap. I love that I didn't know anything coming into this.
Yeah.
This is so much better.
So during, needless to say, during her psych evals, Diane was diagnosed with 3 personality disorders.
Okay.
Histrionic personality disorder, narcissism, and antisocial, or in other words, sociopath.
Yeah.
So the trial lasts about 6 weeks. You know, because there wasn't cameras, I tried looking for transcripts and stuff. Yeah, it's difficult, and I didn't have the time to research it and literally contact the courts and be like, hey,
if you did any sort of suppression of it, you're
right. So, but the trial did last about 6 weeks, and it is said that 500 pieces of evidence were entered. Wow. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Obviously, the jury found her guilty on all counts. And she once again went out of the courtroom, being taken out in handcuffs. She's going to she got life in prison plus 50 years. Yeah. And she's 9 months pregnant. So, obviously, they're not going to let you keep that baby. Yeah. And she walks out in handcuffs, smiling. And then when the reporters are like, do you want, what do you have to say? Blah, blah, blah. She kind of shrugs and smiles and says, I don't know. What is there to say? So she doesn't even cry for herself
or say
or show emotion that oh wow, I'm going to jail for the rest of my life. Nothing.
I have so many questions, but I'm gonna see what you answer.
So there's a lot of aftermath about this. Yeah. Kind of a where does everybody end up kind of situation. Because so exactly. Yeah. So that's why I added this. So I apologize if I'm running way over on time, but hang in there. So
you're not way over.
10 days after the trial, Diane gave birth to a baby girl. She names her Amy Elizabeth. Diane.
She got to name her?
She not for real. Okay. Of course, her adopted parents renamed her. Okay. I don't even know. I don't even know if they actually created the birth certificate like that. Yeah. They just said that that's what Diane wanted to name her. Basically, they took her to the hospital. She was in the hospital for a day. Maybe they didn't even let her stay and
nurse
recover or anything. It varies as to how much time she actually got to hold the baby, but she did get to hold the baby.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times I've seen things where that's for baby, not for mom, and
yes, situations. Yeah. And I mean, they had to take the baby, transport the baby to the adopted parents. The adopted parent, this is not a situation where the adopted parents, they're going to let the adopted parents anywhere near her or they don't want her knowing anything about it. Detective Welch was the one, so he was the main detective on her case. And he says in an interview that she surprisingly let him hold the baby too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not about the baby.
Yeah. It was about the pregnancy.
It's kind of how product killers versus killers who just like to kill. Yeah. Dennis Nilsson is the one that comes to mind. He didn't kill because he was a product killer. He didn't like the killing process. Yeah. He liked the end result. Or there's people who don't like. Yeah. It's the other way around, who like the killing process and not to deal with the dead body. Yeah. So she likes the pregnancy process, but not the baby. The kid.
Yeah. So the baby is immediately taken to the adopted parents who were staying at a nearby hotel. It was Jackie and Chris Babcock, and they changed her name to Rebecca.
Aww.
And called her Becky. So within hours, probably 24 most, I'm guessing, based on sources, Diane's taken back to prison to await her sentencing. She's, like I said, she was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years. Her older children, Christy and Danny. So I'm just going to tell you what happens, and I want to see your response, because some people find this heartwarming. Some people say it's unethical.
Okay.
But they were both adopted by the prosecuting attorney, Fred Hughey.
It's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
I think that in that scenario, if it's unethical, you don't normally, if something's unethical, they don't do it. I say that, I know that that's not generally true, but if you're in a situation where you're around these kids who need a home.
Yeah.
and you fall in love with them.
Right. So
he's, as a prosecutor, doing his job better.
Yeah. So him and his wife never had kids.
Yeah.
And he had said that I've done cases like this, but it is said that as soon as he walked in, so he actually, because they're in kind of a smaller town.
I'm gonna cry.
I know. So because they're in a bit of a smaller town, like him and his team had, like, they worked on the investigation as well. Did the whole thing. Like they lead stuff too. Whereas, you know, in bigger cities, it's more like, okay, you do the investigating, bring it to me after, I'll take it from here. But he was at the site. He was at the hospital that night. And it is said that, like, as soon as he saw these kids, he was like, these are my kids.
Aww.
Like, he immediately got attached and was like, I'm going to take these kids.
So, and to me, I think that that's, you know, right person, right time.
Yeah.
And I think that as a prosecutor, while some people, I do see why people would argue that it's unethical. I think that as long as he's the prosecution and he's doing his job to the best of his ability, which he did. Yeah. And it's very clear. It's like, if she hadn't done it and he was putting an innocent person behind bars to get their kids, that would be one thing. Yeah. But Christy said, my mom shot me.
Right. Well, that's the thing that
makes them say it was coerced.
Makes them say that it was coerced and that they had it and that stuff was planted and blah, blah, blah. All these conspiracy theories, which I'll get to in a sec. I think that that's what they think the motive was for trying to put, like, Diane dug her own grave, man. Yeah. How do you...
When did he adopt them, like, in the process? I'm assuming not until after.
After. Yeah. So, and I'm sure it took time. Yeah. Like, I don't know exactly when, because after this, like, they did everything they could to protect these kids. Like, they have led very private lives. It is very difficult you can't find anything on them after. Yeah. Because they changed their names. They lived their days out. Okay. So jumping back to Becky Babcock, the baby.
Becky.
So the Babcocks kept Becky's true identity secret from everyone until July 11th, 1987, when they received a phone call and found out that Diane had escaped from prison.
Holy crap. What?
Yeah. Detectives were told she climbed the fence and threw a coat over the barbed wire so she could climb over it. Because back then, you have to remember, the barbed wire on these fences, it's like a 16-foot fence.
Yeah.
But the barbed wire is not like the barbed wire that you see today. It's like traditional barbed wire. Yeah, you can get over it. Okay, like, you're going to get scraped up, but you can get over it.
Razor wire will, like, slice you apart.
Yeah, like the stuff you see today, it's like the fence is, like, still, like, the same height or taller and has that angled thing, and then it's got multiple levels of the wiring. Yeah, it wasn't like that. Like, in the footage that they show where she escaped, it's not. It's actually a little bit surprising that more people haven't escaped, quite frankly.
So did they just have to say, like, uh-oh, you gotta be careful?
Yes. So they let the Hughes know, they let the Babcocks know. So the Babcocks then had to basically tell Becky was in preschool at this point. So they had to basically tell everybody who she's with, like, just so you know, this is her true identity. She's escaped prison. Do not let this child go with anyone but me and him. That's it. Yeah. Like, keep your eyes on her at all times. So it's said that Fred Hughey reported that he slept in a chair by their front door with a loaded shotgun every night.
I love this man.
Every night until she was caught.
I love it. I love him because he knew they were his kids and he will go down shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I got goosebumps.
They create, it's a manhunt, of course. Yeah. So basically how she escaped was she got over the fence. She used a coat. She climbs under, it's like right there's the parking lot. She climbs under a car because they found her shirt left behind. She changed clothes. So she must have had extra stuff in her pockets or something. She changes into a shirt. She makes it to not just like out to the road. And she gets picked up by a couple who recognized her. And they pick her up and give her a ride like a mile down the road. I don't know if they were scared. I don't know if they didn't believe she really did it. So they're like, hey, we'll help you. Like,
what?
I don't know. But they drop her off at a restaurant.
Did they get charged? Because they should have.
I don't know. I heard nothing more about these people, and I had so many questions. Like, who are they? Why would they do this? Then she's sighted at a restaurant like a mile down the road.
Bet she stopped for a snack. So
then she's on foot. And they're putting out like stuff all across like 14 states, 14-point bulletin. Contact Steve Downs. Have you heard it? Contact her family. Nobody's heard anything. All along, she was only blocks from the prison. She was like 3 blocks from the prison. She had gone to the house of a fellow inmate whose husband still lived there.
Okay.
And in true Diane fashion, like, what'd she do to get help from him? Yeah.
She didn't.
I don't think her fellow inmate realized, like, this means your husband's gonna be sleeping with this woman. Like,
oh my Lord.
Yeah. So
she must have some strong pheromones.
The guy says in a much later interview that he felt it was his job to keep her there so she didn't go out and hurt anyone, and that he could have turned her in, but he didn't.
Yeah. So he got charged, right?
I don't know. I don't know. So a detective working on the search takes another look in Diane's cell. So this is how they find her, because they're having trouble.
She's so close.
They're searching her cell again, and he finds a pad of paper. The paper's blank, but he notices, it's indented from the last thing written. And he finds the address and a map that like shows the prison, and then a map on like where the house is. So they go.
That be so smart and yet so stupid.
And they find exactly. I've wondered that this whole case. Like, you are so, like, she brags about how intelligent she is, because during her psych evals they give her an intelligence test. Or I'm sorry, it was during the surrogate thing that they give her. They give her an intelligence test. I can't talk. And so she even brags about that later, like in one of her parole hearings. Even, I am so intelligent. I'm like 3 points away from genius. But yet you kept, but you don't know when to shut up. That's your problem. So they go and they find her in good old Wayne's bed.
Oh, his name is Wayne.
In his shirt. She has no bra, and they're like taking her out. There's all this footage because reporters are there.
Obviously.
No bra, and this guy's like old polo shirt and boxers. And she's being hauled back to jail. Yeah, at this point, like, the Babcocks had raised Becky, like, not really telling her a whole lot. When she was about 8 years old, she started wondering and asking questions.
That's actually scientific. I've done research. That is between 7 and 8 is the age where adults can start asking questions.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it's the best age to start telling them things.
Yeah. Well, they didn't know what to tell her. Like, they did tell her.
I didn't know what to tell her either.
They tried to be age appropriate. They tried not to scare her. They did tell her that her mom was in jail, but they kind of like made it very vague and like, we don't know. We don't know what for.
I mean, that's kind of, what do you do?
So, although I kind of feel like they probably should have told her, because what ends up happening is she tricks a babysitter into giving her her real mom's name. And then once she has the name, this is when she's a little older than 8. She goes and like goes to a library or bookstore or something and finds the book Small Sacrifices.
It reminds me of Morgan, where he sends my email is library computer number 4. If you haven't watched the Mindy Project, please go watch the Mindy Project.
Well, yeah. Plug for Mindy Kaling. So she goes to the library, or she finds this book, and she looks, she just wants to see, and there's pictures in it. So she sees pictures. She doesn't read the book because she reads just enough, like she kind of gets to know, and it freaks her out. So she puts the book back. But then a little later, when she's about like 15, 16, a little older, she starts kind of like borderline bragging to people. Like, she just mentions it to friends, like, this is who my real mom is. And I think she's like uncomfortable with it, but it just, I could see being a teenager and being like, isn't my life so crazy? Like, this is, this is what happened. So she's dating this kid when she's 16, and he kind of tricks her into watching the made-for-TV movie based on the book Small Sacrifices. Okay,
what is wrong with this kid? Let me at him.
And she says in an interview now, she says, I didn't want to watch it, but like I couldn't look away.
Yeah, no.
And so she watches the movie, and then she has like this complete identity crisis. She was already probably like kind of partying, but she goes like haywire. She starts using drugs, blah, 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 blah. She gets pregnant with her first son at 17 years old, but continues to like party and do whatever, leaving him with they described it as his aunt. So I don't know if that means like her sibling or the father's sibling. I don't know. She has a second son later in 2006, but gives him up for adoption because she realizes I'm not being the best parent. I can't provide for him. So this kind of triggers her to wonder how Diane felt about her when she had to give her up. And
I think that's a natural reaction.
And kind of wondering, like, did she love me? Like, because she knows, like, Diane was forced to give you up. But, you still wonder. Yeah, absolutely. It's a natural thing. Somebody in her life, like, finds out where Diane is and tells her, here, you can write to her. Mm-hmm. So she writes to her. And initially, Diane responded quickly and positively. They wrote back and forth for some time, a few times, at least a few times. And Becky says that it was pleasant at first, but then the letters kept coming and they, quote, progressively got more and more insane. Diane was seemingly angry when Becky asked who her biological father is and began talking about conspiracies and that she's innocent and that there are people who want to harm Becky. The conspiracy talk grew into like when Becky didn't respond the way she wanted her to or the way she thought she should. Then the conspiracy theories grow into like Becky is part of this conspiracy. You're not really my daughter. Like you're somebody, I assume she means like you're posing as my daughter to try and get me to say something kind of thing. And that, you're trying to set me up kind of thing. So Becky ends the communication, but she still wanted to know who her biological father was. She reaches out. So that's when she like goes public. She's gotten a lot of positive stuff for going public, but she's also gotten a lot of flack for going public because they're like, oh, you're just trying to get like 15 minutes of fame because of your mother, blah, blah, blah. No. So I kind of felt bad for her for that because like she says, that's the reason I went public was because maybe one of these many people who has researched my mother and her story knows who my father actually is. Well, it turns out like eventually like she does interviews with like some pretty big name, but like she did an Oprah interview. She does 2020 interview. Anyway, they connect her with Anne Rule, the author of the book Small Sacrifices, who basically did a ton of research to write that book.
She's the expert.
Yes, but unfortunately, for ethical reasons, she cannot tell Becky who her father is. She's met the man. Bruh. She knows who he is, but she promised to never reveal who it was. All she was given permission to put in the book is that he was a man on Diane's postal route. And that Diane...
And to her, she's thinking it'll ruin my integrity as a writer, as a researcher, as a journalist.
Yep. Yeah. Becky actually did reach out she found Christy at one point and reached out to her. And they had a few, like on Facebook, I think she said, they had like messaged or spoke a few times. But she said that Christy ultimately said, we've lived private lives. We don't really want people coming at us about this stuff because it's still so prevalent. Like, the 2020 special that I watched was done because Diane it was in the year 2020 as well. Diane was up for parole for like the third time. Of course, she gets denied. That's why I didn't really touch on a lot of stuff because to me, this is...
You don't need to.
It's like black and white. And it's black and white. And like we talked about in some of the other cases, like when you're a sociopath and personality disorder, yes, you're crazy, you're insane, but not in the sense that legally... You can make that defense because you know right from wrong. You just don't care. Yeah. You're not capable of empathy. So you just don't care. So the other interesting thing that I just wanted to touch on was Diane continues to maintain her innocence. She doesn't go to these parole hearings. She doesn't go to the parole hearings like, oh, now I've learned my lesson. I'm so sorry. Like, no, she straight up is like, I didn't do this. I was framed.
But if her family is feeding her all these conspiracy theories and she's like claiming.
I don't know if it's her feeding them that or them feed. It's hard to say, because the interesting thing is that her father questioned her innocence in the beginning. And then he flipped. I mean, now he's dead, but because he's old. Like, this happened, back in the 80s. So he was older then.
Do it. He says she's innocent.
So by the time, but years later, like, he flipped and he started this, like, I'm assuming that the family, or he started it, because based on the writing, it's like kind of written in the first person. My wife and I had 5 children and this is how we raised them. So it sounds like it's written by him. Yeah. But anyway, it's DianeDowns.com, and it straight up looks like a conspiracy site. As soon as you look it up, you'll be like, whoa. Her brother does like group pages on social media, also saying free Diane Downs. They claim that the evidence yeah. She's looked it up.
Murder on old Mohawk Road. You be the jury. John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
Yes.
Truth. Court documents.
Yeah. And they do have some documents, but I didn't use any of those documents because, well, they were all like things that they're looking at going, see, this is conspiracy. And I look at and go, I don't see what the problem is. I don't see what the problem is. Okay. So they claim that evidence was destroyed. Witnesses committed perjury, that Steve, the ex-husband, lied to police about the .22 Ruger, and that they claim that they actually tracked down the Ruger.
Yeah.
But that it didn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, murder weapon.
So I did find this interesting in the comments on social media page when asked why wouldn't Christy and Danny, if they had been coerced into testifying, she had been coerced into testifying, and they were so unhappy, and Diane's completely innocent. They are now adults. Like, these people, Danny's my age.
Yeah.
They're in their 40s and 40s to like early 50s. Why would they not come forward at this point? Like, Fred Hughie is probably dead at this point.
Yeah.
Why would they not come forward and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I was a kid. I was coerced. I was told to say this.
Yeah, he's done.
And her brother's response to that was, they were brainwashed babies. That's it. Like, they were brainwashed. But yet they also claim that Christy told people when she was like 15 years old that her mom didn't do it. So this is part of the conspiracy, is there was a woman who called the Hughie household. Fred and his wife were not home. Christy answers the phone, and this woman claims that her name is Angel and that she just wants to talk to Christy about whatever. She's very much, it's disturbing. I listened to the phone call.
Oh, it's public.
It's public. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
You can listen to it. She claims, she's telling Christy, like, so did your mom really do it? And Christy does say, but you can hear it in her voice. She's a 15-year-old girl that just answered the phone to a stranger who's like, this woman's going from 1 second talking about like, do you like Michael Jackson? I have a video of Michael Jackson. Maybe I can send it to you. What other bands do you like? Like, trying to like,
did your mom shoot you?
It's so obvious that like you're trying to like
her into doing something,
butter her up or make her guard down. But you hear it in Christy's voice that she's kind of like, who are you and why are you? But she's still young enough to where she doesn't just have the gumption to go, shut up and hang up the phone, So she tells her, well, if your mom didn't do it, then you really need to call your grandparents and tell them that. They miss you so much. Obviously, it very much sounds like this person was put up to this. Like, they're working with the family in some respect. So they think that phone call is gold. Like,
no, it's
she
a
said,
15-year-old girl not knowing.
and the thing is, she never says that her mom didn't do it. She says, I don't know. She goes, I just don't know.
Yeah. She might not know. She might have blocked it all out. Trauma blackouts are such a real thing.
Yeah. So that's the question. But like, if she just didn't know, why wouldn't she come forward now? Yeah. If she still felt like that, and then like they're asking her like, how are the Hugies? Is it okay living there? Are they nice? And Christy does say like they're nice, but they're kind of old, so like it's not real exciting. Like, because they were older than Christy's natural parents.
And Danny's same.
But what 15-year-old kid isn't going to say things like that about parents that are older and boring? I had a friend in high school whose parents had like older children, like had kids at, the ages you would expect. And then right when mom hits menopause and thinks she can't get pregnant anymore, bam, surprise.
That's how my mother was born as well.
Yeah. So oftentimes those kids, and you're like the youngest, and they're already, all her siblings were out of the house. So yeah, she was like, my parents are boring. Like, they're old. They don't want to do anything. Like,
but you know what? They're loved and they're safe.
Exactly.
And they were taken care of.
Yeah.
And they were protected.
Yeah.
Red Hoogie said, I'm out here with my shotgun.
I protected with my shotgun in my rocking chair.
Come at me, you blonde bitch.
So like I said, Diane's been up for parole, always denied. She still maintains that she is innocent and has learned nothing, apparently.
That was a roller coaster.
That is a roller coaster. See why I wanted to do the case, even though I knew I was going to have to
but it's
hold it together, not get emotional.
Yeah.
But once you know, like, it's more emotional when you don't know the outcome. When you know the outcome, you're like, yes, it's horrifying that Cheryl died. The only thing that makes you feel like a little bit better about it is knowing she was asleep. So she didn't have to sit there. Christy's probably the one that's like the most traumatized because she had to watch the whole thing.
And she probably doesn't remember much. I mean, do you remember much from when you were 8? Like, I mean, I'm sure that's ingrained.
Some. But I didn't have that level of trauma. I had trauma, but not that level. Yeah. So I can't imagine.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Sorry if it was too long, but thanks for listening.
I don't care. I loved it. This was great. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.